The Eocene-Oligocene transition, also called the EOT, happened around 34 million years ago and marks a major climatic event in Earth's history. Before the EOT, the Earth was characterized by a hothouse climate, with no significant ice sheets as Antarctica was covered by forest. After the EOT, Earth shifted to an icehouse climate and Antarctica was covered by a thick ice sheet, more like today. Although the EOT marks a major climatic transition in Earth's history, the processes that led to this transition are poorly understood. One of the main problems is that most of our understanding of the Eocene-Oligocene transition, for example how temperatures evolved, are predominantly based on records from the ocean. There is little evidence for what happened on land, predominantly because accurate methods to quantify temperature on land have so far been missing. To address this research problem, we use state-of-the-art analytical techniques to develop new methods to reconstruct temperature on land. To be specific, we use molecular fossils produced by bacteria living in soils. We show that the form of these membrane lipids in terrestrial settings such as peatbogs changes depending on temperature, with an increase in the degree of methylation as temperature gets higher. It is this fundamental correlation between the degree of methylation and temperature that provides us with a novel method to quantify temperature on land in the past, including across the EOT. But to reconstruct terrestrial temperatures, we needed samples that span this crucial period. For this purpose, we worked together with a team from Australia at the University of Melbourne. They collected samples from thick coal deposits in southern Australia that span the Eocene-Oligocene transition. By measuring the distribution of the molecular fossils in these coals, we showed that across the EOT, as climate transitioned from a hothouse to an icehouse state, temperatures in southern Australia declined by 2.4 degrees Celsius. These results mark one of the first land-based estimates of how temperature changed across the EOT and mark a major advance in paleoclimate research. But however exciting, this data does not tell us about the drivers of the temperature change. Based on the data alone, we could not determine whether this cooling was driven by a change in the location of the continents, a change in atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations, or whether this cooling was driven by the growth of a large ice sheet on Antarctica. To distinguish between these different drivers, we worked together with climate modelers from the University of Bristol. They ran a range of computer simulations using different boundary conditions. For example, running simulations with different levels of atmospheric CO2, or with or without a thick Antarctic ice sheet. The modeling results showed that most simulations didn't match the data, and only those that included a decline in CO2 led to a cooling consistent with the data obtained from the coals. This research that is now published in Nature Geoscience demonstrates that the decline in the concentration of atmospheric CO2 played a major role in driving Earth's climate from a warm greenhouse into a cold icehouse world around 34 million years ago. This transition could be partly reversed in the next centuries due to the anthropogenic rise in CO2 driven by the burning of fossil fuels. This research was funded by the Natural Environmental Research Council, the Royal Society, and the European Research Council. It is based on an ongoing collaboration between researchers from the University of Bristol and the University of Melbourne.